Hey everybody, Ryan Garland here, founder and chairman of Paradigm. Thank you for watching Paradigm Shift. We are sponsored today by 10 Day Doors and PMG, and I'm excited to have James Gray here. He's the Director of Economic Development here in Lake Havasu, so it's an honor to have him. And we're just gonna kind of create some banter today. Really just go back and forth about what's going on in Lake Havasu. I actually did not know this, but this was I would say, what do you call it, a blind date. Eric set us up, right,
Yeah,
for the podcast?
exactly.
And I did not know this until he got here, but he is the guy behind the brains behind the Nomadic, which is kind of the WeWork of the town. And that really caught my attention because that building was so well put together and designed and completely occupied. And with office space changing and the pandemic and so forth and the migration out here, it really caught my attention on the need of that product here. And anybody who's really kind of entrepreneurial side of things, as you guys know, I'm a big fan of seeing kind of forward-facing, technology-driven investments. And this guy's got a lot more intel than I thought he would. But he's been in the game for a long time. So I'm just honored to have you here. So thanks again for being here.
Well, it's excited to be here, and I love to talk about Lake Havasu, especially from economic development. And so we're really excited about your project out here on the north side.
Yep.
And I look forward to talking to you about all types of things on the north side and about co-working and shared spaces and collaboration.
Well, let's start with the co-working thing because I think that was just impressive. But you were so busy, and I think Eric told me you guys are thinking about going up a level because right now it's a one-story, and you're thinking about going up because you need more room.
Yeah, we've done really well. We've been occupied 100% in the offices since we've opened. And we're about 86%. We've actually established even more memberships. We have a new one called the Flex, where before we always assumed people needed to be attached even to like a dedicated desk. And now so many of our people, by just creating 24-hour access to the space where they can sit anywhere they want, but also book the amenities, that has been a growing membership where people are like, we have traveling people are like, I'm only in your town once a month, but when I am, I need to work there 5 days a week, and I can't tell you it's going to be 9 to 5. And so they start booking the conference rooms and some of the other amenities. They hold events there and things like that. So that's been a real effective tool there.
Well, and the data supports that, though. You know, with the pandemic and so many offices shutting down, people will go. I shut my office down in Temecula. I went and moved my headquarters to Nashville. Fell in love with Nashville, but didn't reopen an office because I not only was starting to hire people from all over the country because they're talent, but I wasn't shoveling everybody into one office. So I went and got a satellite office. So now I'm keeping my overhead down, but I had a really nice venue to bring clients to. And if I traveled, sometimes those venues had other locations. So because this is such a huge, I would say, migration area for recreational use, or when it's really cold and everybody, back east, everybody comes out here for the summer because it's 70 degrees outside. Everybody loves it out here during the winter. But at the end of the day, what I realized is that there's a lot of need for that. And when I walked into your office, I felt like I was in more of a modern city because the Lake Havasu kind of, I would say, how do you want to put it? People believe Lake Havasu likes to keep the development in like a certain box. They haven't yet started coming out of their comfort zone and allowing more of that innovation on the development side just quite yet. I think you spearheaded it, and we're kind of coming in and trailing you.
Well, one of the things I would say is, what is Lake Havasu known for? It's probably more of like tequila and a blender and a boat, right? Which is great. We love that. That's our shared product. It's what put us on the map. It's what brought MTV here.
Yeah.
Right? It's an incredible place, whether you're in a side-by-side or on a boat. Like, it's fantastic. We have events. We have all that. But also in the modern space, so many people, especially for employers that are chasing talent, if your average cost of putting someone in an office in San Francisco is almost $30,000 a year just for electricity and lights, and you're now in a talent game where you're chasing few people that you think can do the task, if you allow them to live wherever they want, and then if you give them the right tools where they can be in front of screens, be on cameras, we just not to brag, but Nomadic just added for its main conference room, made it fully digital in there where you just start it up, right?
Yeah.
Why do we do that? Because everyone's not talking to the people in the room. They're talking to someone outside of the room, which is really important. It tells you where the market is. And so people now have to start working everywhere. It's not just local, but your local needs to react to the whole marketplace, and that's the world.
Well, you nailed it. We were chasing more talent than bodies that were local, where, back in the day prior to the pandemic, you're trying to hire people local with the right talent. So when I went to Nashville, I was finding people that with the talent, but they weren't geographically close to drive, other states. So that's when I realized that it was going to be a massive movement, not only because office was shutting down, but my company was thriving because I was able to bring on a better caliber type of people. So I think other employers are seeing that same thing. So regardless of where you're at in the country, if you can have a more professional setting like the Nomadic, people are going, hey, I can be right here and be on a boat at 3:00, but I can work from 7 to 2 and be on the water. So you kind of have everything about everything that you really want in life, that lifestyle, and then you be able to work. So I really appreciated that model.
Yeah, one of the things that we added is we were talking earlier about what we learned about opening a co-work space. So I work for a board of directors, and we wrote a plan called Vision 2020 that was a revitalization for the whole town. And one of the things was to create an entrepreneurial hub, a co-work space, a place where entrepreneurs could come together. And so myself, and we're only a 2-person organization, and we said, great, let's get to building, let's do something. And our board said, hold on, I don't think you know what you're doing. Why don't you go build a ground up, down and dirty, little space, 2,500 square foot, got a lease on it. We probably put $20,000 in it, made a studio, 3D printers, put desks in it, pallet walls. You could imagine it.
Old school, yeah.
Had no tech in it.
Yeah.
Everything was done by keys and email. But what our board was really smart was, go determine the market, and then go see what the benefits of what people really want. And so that 5-year experiment really led us to a lot of the design of Nomadic, which is we needed a platform to run the whole thing, take payments, do all communications like a Slack tool. We needed a door system that was controlled by phones because we weren't going to get into the key game now that we're all of a sudden have, right now I think Nomadic has 45 unique users a month. So how do you control that? And then we put a full camera system in there to create some type of kind of a safety blanket for all the people in there. And so utilizing tech was a lesson that we learned by going analog and building a terrible model, but also understanding the type of people that work here and the environment. And that's why we ended up with things like photo studios, recording studios, little CNC machines, and, all those kinds of tools in a workshop really came from what we learned from the early entrepreneurs that were willing to put up with pallet walls.
Well, then I'm going to piggyback off that. So our family office that was talking about, earlier, that building, which is our new headquarters right there off Dover, I really took your model, and I actually when I bought that project, it had plans for the most part already approved, but it was more of a kind of an open model space. It was just going to be one big office and a lot of storage. It was more of like a flex space. And then when I actually walked into the Nomadic and spent some time with Eric in there, and I fell in love with that space. I'm like, this is awesome. This is great. And then I heard you guys had a big waiting list and so forth. And I'm like, well, shoot, you know what, Joe, give me the steel piece if you don't mind. I was looking at it, and I'm looking at the model. I go back to my plans. I'm like, I can at least put 10 offices in mine. But that was really cool because it allowed me to look at a different model and building relationships with the same thing that you're doing, a little different, but for the most part, identical. And this is what we're going to create. It's called Family Office Society. So kind of a high net worth.
I love the name.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the name.
Kind of the networking. This was actually cut with a CNC machine by our sponsor. But yeah, it was really pretty cool because you really were an eye opener for what was really going on out here. And a lot of the people that were in there, believe it or not, I knew them. Like, oh, I didn't know you had an office here. I didn't even know they even had offices like this because I wanted to open up an office out here, but I wasn't low ceilings, older retail center. It's only, so it just wasn't really my brand. So that's why I built this out and made this an office for now. And then when that popped up, I'm going, okay, we're going to buy that. And then I walked into your place. I'm like, hold on, we're going to go back to planning. And we actually re-engineered the whole building, everything, just to put those 10 offices in there. So I think you created a movement that can take root. We're not going to try to compete with you. I just love what you've done. I really do. I think it's great.
Well, we love it too because beyond a real estate play, we believe it's much deeper than that. And we were talking earlier that Kingman is putting some money into it. Their city council just back building some type of entrepreneur center with the Wave CTED and Mojave College now. And we think that's exciting. And so I think that you come from a different platform on yours. But here's the lessons that I've learned that I think probably plays even heavier into your side is the old adage of how do you start a business, right? And when I grew up, it was like go to the garage and figure it out. And you would kind of be ashamed to ask a friend and tell them what you were doing. And so we were lucky enough to teach ASU Startup School. And, the first week, people would say, hey, does someone want to talk about their business? And what's the first thing that happens in a group of 15 people? Well, I don't want to give away my great idea. Someone might take it. And then someone does share, and after 45 minutes and a full whiteboard of 15 entrepreneurs working on that one business, next week we say, who wants to talk about their business? And everyone raises their hand. There's a value of collaboration, and there's a value of having mentors and people that are 3 steps ahead. And so, I think about Eric Godalia that was in Nomadic, and we had a few people in city council said, well, Eric is an incredibly successful person. And I said, he is. Well, why does he need to be in Nomadic? I said, because he's building a beautiful place in downtown, and he needs some temporary office space. But let me tell you the value of Eric. For other entrepreneurs, you think you work hard until you work hard against someone that works even harder than you, and it gives you a lesson in life.
Yep.
And then there's just another metaphor for us as from the city where we're looking for an economic incubator of sorts. We're not all trying to get, low-end stocks and startups. We want a mix because a mix allows people to grow, right? So we need people that are just starting, and we need people that are further along in the game that can help other people and that can share some of the wisdom that they have, that understand their own business model, and even can help beyond that. So I think on what you're trying to do, that probably works 10x because they're all probably pro players compared to what we're doing, but it works even better.
Yeah. And once you have a good idea, now it takes capital, right? And that's where sometimes I can come in, is how to raise capital, do it the right way, that type of stuff. Well, let's migrate over to, I did not know how involved you were with the mall either. I think that's kind of the redheaded stepchild of the city. So let's talk a little bit about that one. So let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to 2008, how it kind of came about, all the story that you shared with me earlier. Let's just kind of go with that, and then I'll kind of dive in with it from there.
Yeah, it's a great story. It's a sad story. It's having a resurrection as we speak. It's having probably the investment now that it should have originally had in 2008. But that was Wolford Development out of Tennessee came in and built that. It's an incredibly beautiful facility. They did not spare any expense back in the day. Unfortunately, it opened in 2008 in the middle of summer, and by the time we get 6 months later to 2009, we're in a global recession.
Oh, yeah.
And so a couple of things to point out about that is sometimes it's hard because we've been on it seems like a 12 to 13 year bull market. We're just running everywhere, rural, metros, America. It's great. But if you remember back in 2009, stock market was 6,500, unemployment was 13%.
Oh, yeah.
Things were not looking sharp. And so for retail, Unfortunately, in 2008, Walmart was the biggest company in the world. Yep. And when we came out of that in 10, Amazon was. So that really set a path for rural spaces that large shopping centers and brick and mortar, not only had they missed on the economy, but they had missed on how rural customers would actually buy from large brands.
You know, and that, because I've been coming out here for 35 years, so I watched the whole thing go up, and I remember going, okay, it's a little bit out here, but I also realized the amount of dirt that was in between kind of the city to here. I'm going, this will build out one day. And then as I've morphed into my career, if you think about, let's say, go to California, because most of the people that live are out here are from California. You think of kind of
True statement.
Yeah. You look at all the retail, whether it's Riverside, Orange County, doesn't matter. All of the homes around, you know, that retail feeds that retail. There's nothing out here. You know, right. North Point, you know, Viewpoint, that all started kind of coming out here. You're starting to hear about Apex building a bunch of homes out here. It's coming out here slowly because there's no other available land anymore in the city, like closer in Midtown. So you're seeing it all come out here. That's where I felt that from my mentor, it was always a long-term play that makes money in real estate. So when this project came up, I couldn't pass on the deal because there was a demand for it. Everyone's coming down the 40 off the, or coming down the 95 off the 40, coming from California and Vegas, Phoenix, what have you. So that I knew that this is a main thoroughfare, and it's right across from the airport. One day, airports will expand. So I knew that was and then you had Walmart. So you have groceries. And if you look at some of the bigger guys like BlackRock, Blackstone, Goldman, when they invest into a mixed use, they love to invest in mixed use that is anchored by a grocery store. You have a Walmart, that's a good play. You got big box stores, JCPenney, kind of recession resistant in some cases, Dillard's, especially this one here. A lot of those companies really do lay a foundation. The problem is that there wasn't a need for the homes out here because everybody was staying in town because that's where, or going into Midtown because that's what was the culture of Lake Havasu. Now that there's so much demand for homes and attainable and affordability, we're seeing it all come north now. So eventually, and I loved what you were talking about earlier, this is going to be the kind of the new upgraded hub because you're going to see the newer, more, I don't want to say sophisticated, but more of the forward-thinking development. More, the city will kind of allow, maybe a different design, more modern design. That'll start coming out here, and eventually people are going to want new, right? So they're going to start coming out this direction. So I have a sticky feeling that this place, it's just a matter of time. It's going to pop. In the next 5 years, I think this whole area is going to be different.
I would agree with that, and I just a couple of things to add to that. So we're kind of stepping back in time, right? Yeah. So when we say 2008, like the world is drastically different, and so a couple of things. The growth of our town has exploded. So currently, just to throw a couple stats on top of this, so currently the town sits at about 60. It's about 62.7. So let's just call it 63,000, and then you take the unincorporated areas. We're probably working with about 70,000 people, and then we have 1.6 million tourists a year. So that's the playground. So a lot of times people will say, well, it's only a 70,000 person community, but really on a daily, a weekly, a monthly look at it, it's floating a whole lot more people in here. And then I love your connection when you say Southern California. So as an economic developer, I'm a part of a lot of associations in the state. And, the long-term joke is always that, Lake Havasu City is kind of California. And if you're in Arizona, it's a funny little joke. But it really tells a broader story of where we sit in Mojave County. And, when people think about Mojave County, it's a tri-city. They used to call it a tri-city. Mm-hmm. It's not much of a tri-city anymore, as one city has kind of rose to prominence and the other two have kind of stayed at the same. But Bullhead really reflects their Laughlin, Nevada roots, and Kingman is an old Route 66 town. But California has always been, Lake Havasu has always been a playground of California. And just to drive that home, when I talk to people in Phoenix that are thinking about Lake Havasu, I always tell them, hey, you go to Rocky Point, Mexico? And they go, yeah. And I said, well, we're the Rocky Point of Southern California, which is the fourth largest economy in the world. So that kind of makes sense of how people look at us. They've been here, they know us, they're probably coming here at least once a year. And so that's kind of the answers a lot of the style, the investment, the type of person that lives in Lake Havasu.
You know what I've realized too is a lot of people that I talk to that have, let's say they moved out, they grew up here, they moved out of here, they're coming back. That's really kind of cool to hear. You know, I was on the phone with a client of mine a couple of days ago. In fact, yeah, a couple of days ago. I was thinking last week. No, it was only a few days ago. And I was talking to her. She's like, I'm from Havasu. I was like, oh my goodness. So, because I actually am surprised how many people know about Lake Havasu. I talked back east. They're like, oh yeah, I grew up in Phoenix, or I grew up, you know, and I used to go to Lake Havasu, where I grew up in Washington, and I used to go down to Lake Havasu. And you're like, wow, the amount of people. So that piggybacks off what you were saying of 1.7 million visitors a year. That's a lot of visitors. You know, and for the size of town and the amenities that it offers, that's a lot.
Yeah. Well, it also directly benefits the residents that are here because they're getting a lot higher food, hospitality, bar scene than they would if they lived in a 63,000 person community.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what your projection, because you're knee deep into this. I mean, if anybody knows about the growth of Lake Havasu, it's going to be you. So let's get into the weeds, because this is what I think most of our audience is going to want to hear. What do you believe, where do you think Havasu is going to be in the next 5 years? So you're probably seeing the migration, you're seeing healthcare, you know, baby boomers are retiring, more of that stuff, right? What do you think, where do you think Lake Havasu will be overall? And let's hover more towards the north side, just because it's relevant to what we're building.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. So one, since we've had a real growth explosion since about 2015. The north side has expanded more than the south side, and that generally has to do with lot consumption. Mm-hmm. So the south side was the first side that was developed. It had more amenities. And then because we're bisected by Highway 95, and then we have an east-west McCulloch and a midtown and a downtown, a lot of the original development was on the south side. It is the older side. And that's why all the new development, all the new housing tracts, Campbell Ranch, you're talking about all the new large developments are out towards the north. So the city is actually moving on its axis for people. And so when we were talking about the shops not really being a retail center anymore, but being a business node, a hub, an anchor for lifestyle of Northside people, that's one of the reasons you're starting to see the investment, right? So Jared Ports over there has just poured in, I believe it's just around $30 million into the new medical center, mm-hmm. which our town now is an inbound trauma center, has open heart, cancer surgery. So that's from LifePoint in town, but that is growing to serve all the people that have been coming. So some of them are baby boomers that are retiring for sure, but it's a different type of person because in the past, it's looked a lot more retirement. It's looked a lot more golf. It's looked a lot more like just grocery store and go out to a restaurant once a week. That is not who's coming here right now. Who's coming here is across the age spectrum, a lot of them in the 35 to 50 who have already done quite well, have won the race in metros and have done things, but now are looking to kind of get a balance in their life, and they want to come back. And, you know, maybe when they were 20 and going to university and coming back, they thought this is the worst place on earth. And now they've lived a bunch of places, and they're like, that was a pretty great place to live. And now I'd really like to spend a lot of quality time with my family and still run my business, right? And so we're seeing a lot of that. And then for the older demographic, they're coming back, but, you know, 60-year-olds don't look the way they used to. And in fact, if you've met a 60-year-old who's retired, watch out because they probably have twice as much energy
Yep.
as you do because they are loving life and they're doing 100 different activities and they look like teenagers. So
Well, and that's exactly it out here. I feel like those 60-year-olds are more active and they're doing more recreational stuff. And that's Havasu in general. You're outside, you're boating, you're golfing, you're never really inside unless it's really, really hot. And most of the time you're traveling. So when it is really hot out here for a few months, people are traveling and going east and kind of spend time with family, what have you. And that's why RVs and boats and so forth. But I love exactly what you said too, and I never really touched on it. But you're right. I am guys like me. I just turned 40, but that 35 to 50-year-old guys or families that are so this town. Let me back up. This town is also big in family. That's the one thing I really appreciate about it as well is how much the city talks about youth and how we want to continue to invest into more things for the youth. I loved that because that's my biggest concern was small town. I came from Southern California. I want my kids to kind of enjoy kind of that just diversification and going to the beach and going to the snowboarding and going to do this. But they're starting to get that here. And really, if you don't mind driving, it's not that far. But at the end of the day, you nailed it. Those are the groups that are coming out here. And again, being able to work from anywhere it's kind of driven that as well. Cost of living is really insane right now. People don't really want to spend $2 million on a house just to be in California and outside LA. It's pretty expensive. But you can come out here and you get way more bang for your buck and you can have another toy or two, for what you'd spend for a house in California. And that's what I've been really recognized. That's why these storage units are doing so well is because people are buying more toys. And people need more room because they're buying more toys. So it's really the demand that I've seen that's driven us to want to develop this. And on top of that investment, 1031 exchanges, people are looking to roll over their IRAs, and they're also focused on healthcare. So people are more aggressive in making investments. They're bullish on making moves now. They could say back in '08, you saw it coming, but you didn't make a move. Now people are like, I don't want to go through that again. Let's just do it now. So people are just not afraid to start shifting earlier on. And that's what we've seen as far as my conversations. So I would have to piggyback off one more thing too, which would be the gym that we're building out here. So you just nailed it, the lifestyle. I agree. I think the mall is going to be the next movement for lifestyle, more restaurants. I'd love to see some apartments, create some more density over there, but with some other smaller retail, but also more business hub as well. So you nailed it. And that's what having a gym there where everything's kind of walking distance and then you got a grocery store at Walmart. You literally have everything. Now it's just about kind of building the infrastructure around it. And this thing, I think, will thrive. And again, now that we own, so Paradigm Storage is 225,000 square feet with the barn caves and the gym. I think that's 505,000. So let's just call it 730,000 square feet. And give or take, that whole mall, 730,000 square feet. We're basically doubling the amount of square footage under roof as the mall. And we're doing it within, 5 years. So that's quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think
So
honestly, from economic development standpoint, we're kind of piggybacking on that, right? So like development creates development. So last month we had a visit from another healthcare provider looking to do a $20 million CapEx medical facility. And so development breeds on development. And so when we're looking at the opportunity that's being put in there, we're also looking at people that are investing outside. And then we're also looking at the potential of what the city is going to be doing in the next couple of years to create a larger footprint for the airport, right? And so that's a timely thing. Aeronautical development does not happen overnight. It kills private developers because the FAA requires so many different things to happen, and you don't really control every inch of your land for very good reason. But if you start looking at all the economic points that are sitting out here in this little triangle, it's going to grow even bigger.
Well, I just went over to Ironwood, and what they literally built was, let's just say a couple of 100 yards from here, really. They just built like a Top Golf driver's range. You've seen it?
Yeah, it's impressious.
I'm impressed. I'm like, what? I hadn't been in there, and I couldn't believe it. I walked in there, and I'm like, wow, this is nice, because the Refuge I think the golf course went under for a while, and then the gentleman came in there and spent a lot of money getting it up to par. And now there's a lot of homes being built in there. I mean, he revived that place, and it's so nice. And then he bought the old hotel that was in front of it. I think it's torn down now, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a new RV park, which looks really good. I mean, for an RV park, I'm like, this looks really good. But it's more higher end. Like everything I drove by there. I mean, they have big date palms in there. I mean, he landscaped it really nice. So it's not like that guy is not coming in here looking at, he knows the demographics. He knows there's people coming out here with money. They want safety. They want family. They want a little bigger lot. They want to have freedom. They want to park their stuff. And he's created a really good movement there. So that's how I felt that the mall is going to be. And there's more conversations I'm kind of hearing that is being built over here. And I'm going, well, man, I think my timing was dead on. So
I think your timing was perfect.
yeah, I think my timing's dead on. But this, I think, was a good conversation piece right next to Home Depot. But the barn caves, and that's what we'll kind of go back into that. So the barn caves, what do you think? So what's the buzz around town about the barn caves? Because if anybody's going to know, it's going to be you.
So I think people are really excited. So a couple of things. If I was a betting economic developer and everyone said, how many storage units is it going to take to satisfy this playground? I would have lost a decade ago, right?
You would never know you needed this many
And
storage.
so if you're not in the business and you say, why are people keep developing these properties? There's a simple answer. They make money and they sell out, and there's still waiting lists. And so it might be hard for a person that's not in the business to understand that, but that's the reality. And so the reality is there's been a couple of plays that have changed storage in Lake Havasu. One of it is to our friends to the north here. That whole development was based on, hey, if you're going to come to the Southwest every year in their RV, do you really need to drive your RV back up to Seattle and pay Seattle rates when land is so expensive to park it? Wouldn't it be better to fly into Las Vegas, take a shuttle, and have your RV stay in an Arizona climate-controlled space and then start on the playground? And the answer is yes, because it's cheaper across the board.
Yep.
Both from taxes and just from maintenance. So there's one. The second I would say is this is more of an innovative approach. This is kind of what people are asking for. Like there's ways that we've had at Sailing Hawks where you've had these massive drive-through garages that people love, cannot get enough.
I sold mine out here right as soon as I talked about them.
They're amazing because this is where people are putting toys, right? But that is a huge price tag compared to what you're suggesting. And then this also goes into our other conversation about how people want to be mobile. So there's a couple analogies I'd like to just throw out to your listeners, and I'd love to hear feedback. But, I'm 56 years old, and, back in the day, if you moved before social media, if you just said, hey, I'm tired of Oregon, I'm going to go retire in Arizona, you just lost all your friends in whatever town you've lived with in 30 years.
He just rolled over.
People can literally just go move and live someplace for 4 years, have all new restaurants, meet a bunch of people, and go move to another town, and they don't lose a soul. They get to watch everyone's lives. They can reconnect. They can talk if they want. That medium has allowed everyone to be more concerned about their shared space, their community. How competitive are we? What does it look like? And so in this case, for the barn dominiums, it's kind of throwing a lot of those in that mix because people are way more mobile than they were before. And so what they're looking to invest in isn't just it's just different.
Yeah, no, it really is. And I think the idea was to try to create kind of a lock and key model as well. And so it can kind of cater to, first time home buyers down to, people just come in a handful of times a year. And that's really the idea. And then again, I was telling you before, the design of it as a developer, you want to look at any economic adjustments, right? And how that can affect investors that are involved, and then you're going to have in buyers. And so we were looking at it going, look, we want to design this in a way where, because we do a lot of stuff in-house, we're more vertically integrated from a construction side, development side, even manufacturing. That's hence the partnership. And then we can kind of control our costs a little better. So therefore, if the market were to drop, we can ride that wave because we created margin. So we have a well-oiled machine moving forward. We can do a lot of them. And so the idea is to try to build something what everybody wants. The way to do that is typically density, right? To keep my costs down, but do more volume for the yield that I'm going to look for it to make sense for investment. And because it is right here next to the mall, I had a sticky feeling that the city's going to support that, going, yes, we're going to try to help you guys. Anybody who wants to do anything over there, we got your back. But anything that has more of a high density overlay would probably do real well, especially when it is a mall. And I'm kind of, again, looking 5 years down the road. You know, if you have a mall, you have retail, you have a business center, live, work, play is a big movement. You can get a lot of institutional capital looking at that type of stuff. You have the right data. So I'm going, okay, well, and I have the whole story of the barn dominium I was sharing with you, and I kind of built the whole house inside of an old barn built in like the early 1900s. And then this project we're sitting in now, Paradigm Storage, you know, these big units, people wanted to live in them and stay in during the weekends, right? When they come into town, because it has bathrooms, showers, kitchenettes, whatever. And I go, well, why don't I just go to a 3-story product, because I can keep the density, give everybody the garages that they want, make it a little bit longer. So, 28 by 70s, these are 28 by 60s. And then go 2 stories up, go vertical, just, may ask for a height adjustment and get what we need. And everybody just said, I love it. So then when I started going through the design, the interior design, I started looking at it going, okay, I want to make it feel like this kind of New York vibe. So when you come in on the second floor, all of your living, so mind you, the whole first floor is all garage. You got same thing we have in here, air conditioned, fully, or at least temperature controlled, fully insulated. And then we'll have an elevator about centralized inside the storage or inside the unit. You go straight up to your second floor. If you had groceries, you just walk out and put the groceries right on your countertop in your kitchen. And then you have 2 bedrooms back behind that, 2 more bathrooms upstairs, massive living space. You have a balcony that goes over the garage, part of the garage, for the kind of the forward facing of the unit. And then when you walk out, let's just say from the kitchen, and let's say you have like typical lights that come down over your your island.
Yeah.
As soon as you walk past the island, it goes into a vaulted ceiling, and now you got a 26-foot vaulted ceiling, so it makes it feel massive open space.
Yeah.
And then the rest of the other half of the building is a third floor master suite with your own private balcony. It goes out the back with a huge walk-in closet and kind of a European themed bathroom shower. And every time I was kind of testing the waters to my existing clients, friends, family, what have you, and they're like, this is awesome. You got to build these things. Well, what was nice is because we're building them out of steel and we already know kind of how to do this from the projects that we're building, I'm like, the framing will be pretty easy, and because I don't have as many walls inside the house, I can cut my costs. So you see where I'm going. All I do is pitch the roof, create a different color map, right? And then I'll kind of keep that modern barn dominium look with a big garage, 2 stories of residential, and keep it in the right price point, and we can pump these out all day long. And I think it married up perfectly, and I'll sum up with this part. It married up perfectly with what's going on with tariffs and lumber costs and steel costs. And then also insurance, because now the homeowner's insurance for steel buildings is going down when stick built's going up. So we were looking at that data too, and I've seen that because we lend money as well. So I'm a hard money lender, and I get a lot of requests for barn dominiums back east. And I remember looking, I'm like, these guys want loans on a barn? And then I'm like, these are really single family houses. These are fully built out, like regular insurance policies will cover it. Mortgage will actually lend on it. This is a true single family. So with all those pieces, hence the barn dominium, barn caves, right?
So a couple things first of all, it's innovative. Let's just start there.
Thank you.
One of the things that we have to talk about is there's an old way of doing construction, and it looks more like assembling an art piece, right? Like everyone's going to be different, and it's going to be custom. And that's really cool if we're talking about art. But if we're talking about people's houses where we're having limited supply of land is going up. Population is rising. The dirt below everything, especially in Arizona, that's been an inbound state for a decade, everything on the rise. So The idea that we just can't start thinking about controlling construction costs is something that I don't think it's not going to be well received in the future. People are going to look back and say, why did people wait so long to optimize building? So that's the first thing I'd have to say about that. And then the second thing is part of optimizing building is creating communities, right? And so you're going to have all these great amenities that they can share, but they also cost share those, right? So, my house, I have to pay for my own pool. I have to pay for every square inch of it. But if I was in a community that, say, had 100 people and they had 2 pools, I would literally only be paying a fraction. And so that also marries up with these new social dynamics where people are like, it's a lot more fun to go to the pool with your kids or with your friends if you're with other people. And I'll just give a quick little metaphor. It's one of the reasons hotels are hurting. Hotels are a singular activity. It's the old, we're going to get in the sedan with you 2 kids and we're going to drive to the Grand Canyon. We're going to stay by ourselves. Traveling soccer teams and everything else have destroyed this model. Now families travel in packs. Mm-hmm. 4 families are going to the Grand Canyon and they're going to rent a house. Why? Because they all need to be together. Yep. People have become way more social. Might be a great byproduct of the phone. That will be for researchers 50 years out from now, but we don't know. But that is a trend. So building communities, there's a lot of advantages. So I think you've tapped into 2. And then the final thing that I really like, that when I hear you talk, that it, really gets me fired up about passion, is instead of just building a space where people could be, you're building a space where people could flourish. So how do people flourish? So I'm from Portland, Oregon. When I was raised back then, we had 7-foot ceilings and we had cotton clothes. And when it rained, we went outside, we got soaking wet, we came back in and our houses was terrible. Now I go up there, they have 14-foot roofs, they have sunlight everywhere, it's raining, it still feels great outside, the clothes are better. We're optimizing. And so when you start talking about these spaces, it's where people can flourish by having tons of light, tons of stuff inside. Yep. They're not cramped. They have plenty of places to move. And that's where people really start living their best lives. So that sounds like a really cool idea that you've put together.
And that's the idea, is even like if you want to hang out by the pool, we're going to have Wi-Fi at the pool. People can kind of lay out and get away from the house if they want to. We have a lounge at the gym. People can go into the lounge and get away and have that. You have little snacks you can get, you can work out. Health and wellness is a big movement right now. Even physicians are telling people to go back to the old school, eat well and work out kind of thing. So we're seeing that movement get bigger and bigger. So I think and I really appreciate the kind words, because that means a lot to us, because we want to feel like we're on the right track. And anybody is knee deep into the development of the city like you do, and actually developing. That's another thing. I don't know if I've met a lot of people that are spearheading the economic development coalition, if you will, but actually developed. I'll be honest. And so it's a different vantage point when your boot's on the ground, and that's where I respect the model. I'm really glad you're here. And then hearing that you've built something that was totally outside the box, kind of against the grain, that nobody really supported, let's be honest, and now it thrived. And that's really where you nailed it. I think that's where Havasu is going, and that's what people are looking for. And this, I think, has really been that another step up to that.
Well, I appreciate that. And, I really have a lot of latitude with my board, but just a couple things on that. When you're in economic development, it's really not about going to meetings and hearing about what other people are doing. I have 2 aspects of my job. If I'm at a cocktail party that, people say, what do you do? And you're like, oh, I don't really want to say, and then I'll say something cheeky, like I make rich people richer, right? And in some ways that's true when I'm working with out-of-town investment people that are coming in to make a big play for the community. But then I also do stuff in the community to make people that live here stronger. And so that has to do with nomadic. But here's another thing. So we're really involved in downtown. And, we went to our board years ago and we said, one of the things that's really missing in Lake Havasu is we're such a young town that we don't have a lot of culture. And so we want to focus on a downtown, and we want to start building, art, music, food, culture. And here's how we propose to do it. And we said, well, we're going to start a First Friday. And our board was like, that doesn't sound like economic development. I said, well, I think it's something we need to do to start attracting workforce. We need to start putting stuff in front of families. And so 6 years ago, we started with Darth Vader, a DJ, and a generator in an alley. And we were like, I hope someone comes, Last year we're in season 6. Last year we had 42,000 people at the 9 events.
Wow.
And the city is now building an event center in downtown.
Yep. I drive by it every day.
So the point is, I don't think you can do economic development by saying, hey, what are other people's best ideas and what are they willing to put into the game? Sometimes as an entrepreneur, you have to say, what am I willing to grow, even if I have to grow it out of an alleyway? And so when you're a part of it, I think it makes you more useful for entrepreneurs that put all the skin in the game, right? And now our scales are way different, but our heartaches are the same, right? Yeah. So like when we were building Nomadic, it's not the first 2 million, but it's the last 40,000 where you're like, this thing's got to get a certificate of occupancy. We need revenue. Like, what are we doing? And you're yelling at people and because you're at the stress point, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that that's incredibly valuable, not only for economic development, but for cities. And so we're lucky that we have a lot of support from our city and Jess, our city manager, to even watch people that are willing to try it on their own. It's more empowering. And I also think it's the spirit of our town. We were founded by an entrepreneur, and we really don't have large companies that have 300 jobs. Yeah. And, Havasu Regional has almost 900 employees, but that's not really our backbone. Our backbone is entrepreneurial companies of 4 to 6 people that have really good, solid businesses. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the reasons that the income is so high, because essentially 2 to 3 of those people are very well paid mm-hmm. employees. And the other 2 to 3 are learning their skills to get to become highly compensated people.
And I like that because it is a big community. I mean, the boating community alone, right? People know each other by the names of their boats. Yeah. And that's the thing about the boating community is everyone's so helpful and kind, and it really is a true community. And that's what it feels like here overall too. So when people come out here and you're successful, a lot of times those successful guys are going to pull other guys up with them. And show some leadership. And I really appreciate that about this town because I get a lot of young men reaching out to me going, hey, how do I get into the business? What do I need to do? And they're so humble and they're like, I just want to get there. How do I do that? They're not pumping up their chest and being fake. I really appreciate that about this town. Now you got all kinds of guys in every walks of life all over the place, let's be honest, but it is definitely a different atmosphere here. And I really appreciate that. But that's where I want to be. I want to be around like-minded people that kind of, speak the same language and want to be a part of a community, want to help others, and want to be successful together and spend time with their families. And I think that's just really key for me. So, yeah.
Well, if you're growing, everyone's growing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Normally, right? Yep. Yeah. So, well, Mr. Gray, thank you very much for your time. This was very fruitful, and I'm hoping my listeners will appreciate it. I'm sure they will. But I'm probably going to ask you to come another time. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and ask my audience, if you will, I'm going to do a little poll. I want you guys to give me maybe some a yes or no about having this young man on. I'm going to say young man if you don't mind. Having this young man on, and also any questions you want to ask about Lake Havasu, because this is the guy we'll know. So I'm hoping we covered some ground on kind of the atmosphere of what's going on here, the growth of the north side. Obviously, it's a little biased because we want to know about our project, but Lake Havasu overall. If anything you guys want to know, go ahead and fill out the form below, and we'll get you some answers, and we'll have them on for another round. So thanks, guys. I appreciate it.